Happy Monday, everyone. We're back for another episode of AKP Sports Talk. As always, I'm Ari here with Korea. How was your weekend, Korea?
It was fantastic, Ari. We're gonna talk about it right now, but it's March.
Yeah, we'll dive right into it. Here, I'll share. Pulling up the bracket. Can you see that?
Perfectly.
Okay, cool. Okay, so first things first. I think we'll go over Korea. Were there any teams, let's just say, either that didn't make it that you thought should have made it, or we can go into like teams that you thought were overseeded or underseeded or just anything along those lines?
Yeah. First, I'm gonna go into teams that should have made it that did not make it. Number one should be Texas A&M. Look, we saw the Aggies run throughout the SEC tournament. They had pretty much a Cinderella story run, beating Florida in that buzzer beater, and then facing Auburn the very next day, beating them, then facing Arkansas the day after that, beating them, and then coming up just a little bit short in the SEC title game against Tennessee yesterday afternoon. I believe that one, A&M should not only be in, but they should be like very comfortably, on that last four in right there. I don't believe a team like Michigan who for those 14 losses, that those play into account. Yes, the 17 wins are good, and those are good quad one wins. But when you look at the overall body of work, Michigan has had some very bad losses, and you've seen their season. They've had a bunch of scandalous, obviously with the whole Juwan Howard situation. I thought Michigan was going to be one of the last teams in. I thought they were going to be playing in Dayton, but the fact that they were not playing in Dayton and the fact are going straight into the round of 64, I find that pretty alarming. I'm really surprised as to why the committee really overvalued Michigan, a team that has been inconsistent all season and, just not really there this year, is valued more than a team like A&M, who, yes, had a really rough start to the SEC play, was near the bottom of the SEC, but then started getting those big wins under head coach Buzz Williams and started climbing up the ladder in the SEC, and then obviously using that momentum to steamroll their way through the SEC tournament, ending in a loss in the title game. So if I'm Texas A&M, I would be very upset right now. But at the same time, it's very understandable. Obviously, the whole body of work is something that the NCAA committee really takes into account. And I think that they really would really value just the whole body of Michigan, which I find that pretty laughable compared to A&M's, who went on this hot streak at the end and was playing pretty much their best basketball of the season. So that's pretty much one of the biggest grievances I have with this bracket, just the fact that Michigan is not playing in Dayton tomorrow or Wednesday, and also that A&M is not in. I believe Michigan would probably be on that bubble. But then again, with all the teams that are already in, it's kind of hard to say, okay, which team are we moving in for A&M? Because Wyoming, I mean, yes, a lot of people are thinking about Wyoming. How are they a tournament team and all of that stuff? I mean, I've been clamming for Wyoming all year, but this program is really good. The Wyoming program, the Cowboys have a great season. Obviously led by Hunter Maldonado, their main guy, along with Drake Jeffries, that 1-2 combo. Wyoming has been undervalued just because obviously they play in the Mountain West, but now the Mountain West has had that prominent showing, and I thought Wyoming should have been in. They are in. That's one of my biggest things. I literally, when I saw them on the last four in, I was hollering, I was screaming. I was like, thank God, because they deserve to be in. But in terms of just teams in and out, I would say one, Michigan should not be that high, and two, A&M should be in. Also, you could also say Dayton may be in, but it's just hard because Dayton, they're a young team, and that bad loss in the semis, I think, to Richmond in the semi, that's a bad loss for them. And now Richmond, who's in the tournament, pretty much kicked out A&M because it would have been A&M at that last spot if Richmond didn't win. So it kind of makes sense to see, okay, Richmond kind of kicked A&M out, even though A&M, had a decent showing in the SEC title game against Tennessee. So that's pretty much it in terms of teams in and out. In terms of seeding, My only big grievance is why is Villanova a 2 and Tennessee a 3? I believe Tennessee should be on that 2 line pretty much right where Villanova is. I mean, Tennessee, they had that great run. We just talked about it. They won the SEC title. They have had wins. They have had good wins. They have a higher net than Duke and Villanova. They have higher SOS, SOR, all that stuff. But I can see that one of the biggest things, obviously Villanova did play Tennessee earlier this year. I think it was at a neutral site, and Villanova did win. So that's pretty much kind of one of the big reasons as to why Villanova is a 2 and Tennessee is a 3. But I believe Tennessee should be maybe at the bottom of the 2 line just because of how they've dominated the rest of the season. I think Tennessee deserves to be a 2 seed. They played great basketball as of recently. They won the SEC title over a dominant win against a Texas A&M team that was really hot, who beat pretty much 2 of the teams that are in the tournament back-to-back days. So I believe Tennessee should definitely be a 2. Villanova, you can make a case for them being a 2, but I believe they're also a 3. But in terms of any really bad egregiouses here, it's kind of how I expected it, honestly. Nothing too surprising on the one lines or anything like that. I thought Houston could maybe get up to a 4 line just because of their win in the American Championship game. But I guess, but it's understandable that Arkansas and Providence are that Arkansas and Providence are one of the last 4 lines in the bracket. So in terms of like overall huge surprises, I didn't really have any this year. Not really any any bad grievances that I have against the committee this year. I'd say the committee did a pretty fair job, with just getting all 68 teams in. I don't believe Xavier was a team in. I don't believe Wake Forest was a team in. So that's good that they're not in. I do believe Wake Forest should have been one of the first teams out. I'm surprised that they put Oklahoma in, though. I don't know why Oklahoma should be one of the first teams out. That, yes, this team did beat Baylor, but are we just saying that you beat the defending national champs, now you're automatically one of the last 4 in? One of the first 4 out. Other than that, really no grievances, honestly. I kind of knew that these teams would probably be the teams that are in. I'm very proud that the committee did put Wyoming in because a lot of people were saying that A&M was going to be in over Wyoming, and I was sweating. I was like, oh, here we go. It was the last region. I saw Wyoming in, so that was good. But other than that, pretty much a clean bracket. I'm excited to see how it turns out.
For me, kind of overall, one theme I kind of took away was that, the committee didn't really seem to take into account these conference championships that, just happened. Like, Indiana just beat Michigan, and yet they're a lower seed. Like you're talking about Tennessee, they just won the SEC championship, and they were a 3 when I agree they should be a 2. So, I don't know. I feel like overall they didn't take into account. I agree and get that the conference tournament, isn't everything, but I feel like they just didn't take it into account enough. And you'd think it would be the other way around where they would take it into account more because it's like the most recent games that we saw, but it seemed to be the other way around. But yeah, I mean, overall, I'm kind of with you with A&M that they probably they upset. Who was it? Was it Arkansas or who they had the big upset in the conference tournament?
That was I think that was against Auburn first, and then
Auburn.
Arkansas.
Yeah, they beat. Yeah, like I feel like but other than that, and then a few just seeding. Other than that, I agree. It's mostly pretty reasonable. I guess next we can kind of go into what first round matchup we're most excited about. So I guess when you were watching the selection show, what's 1, maybe 2 games that you're most looking forward to watching in round 1?
Yeah, definitely. I have 3. When I saw it, I was like, this is going to be a good match. My first one is out of the West region, Boise State and Memphis. That is a really good 8-9 matchup. You have literally 2 completely different offensive styles. You have Boise State, who is really using all the shot clock, ground and pound, get into the lane, take up all the time. Very slow and methodical way of playing basketball. Old school, quote unquote, old school basketball. That's how Boise State plays. But they are one of the best defenses in the country versus Memphis, who is very high octane, quick passes, trying to find that open person, always high octane, high moving, high, taking not only taking 10 to 15 seconds in the shot clock. So that's going to be a very contrasting matchup, but it's really intriguing because it's pretty much described as like the tortoise and the hare. Like you have Boise State, which is very slow. They take their time moving up the court, and then you have Memphis, who is always fast breaks and quick threes and all that stuff. That's going to be a very intriguing matchup. It's going to be good to see how Boise State will match either Memphis' speed or how Memphis will have to adjust to Boise State's slow-paced offense. That's going to be a good matchup. Out of the South now, another matchup I like is that 5-12 between UAB and Houston. That's going to be interesting, honestly, because they're both very high-scoring offenses. UAB, obviously led by Jordan Walker, who averages 20 a game. He's their guy, and they're shooting the ball well, and UAB is on a hot streak right now. If I had to circle a 12-5 upset, that may be one of them. UAB has a lot of momentum right now. But obviously Houston, Coach Kelvin Sampson, they just led this team to the Final Four last year. So they have that in their back pocket, even though they did lose their best two guards and Marcus Sasser and one more. I forgot the other guy's name. They lost their two best guards, but still Houston is still playing good basketball as of late. So it'll be interesting to see kind of like, it's more like first person to 75 or 80 kind of wins that game. Just so high scoring. And UAB shoots the ball very well. They shoot about, I think they're 7th in the country in points per game with 80. So they already shoot the ball well. They don't have a great defense, but it's the fact that their offense is just so fluid that it just makes sense for UAB to be a great, maybe 12-5 upset right there. So those are two matchups I really am intrigued to watch. There is another one, I believe, out of the Midwest region that I really was kind of circling, was definitely Providence and South Dakota State. Now, this matchup, this is going to be good because this is a South Dakota State team who I think is a little underseeded. I think they're a 12, honestly, and they proved themselves. They're 30-4 this year. I mean, we've talked about it many times, but this team is literally one of the best shooting offenses in the country, according to KenPom, and just all the stats that they've built up. They hit all their threes. They just beat you inside. They can pull it from anywhere. This team has plenty of shooters, and I don't know if Providence is going to, keep up with that, considering Providence, they have a very methodical way of playing basketball under head coach Ed Cooley. So that's going to be interesting to see how Providence will really adjust to just how the prolific offense of the Jackrabbits, to see how they actually do. And then out of the East, I do like that 6 versus 11, Texas versus Virginia Tech, because Virginia Tech's on a hot streak right now. Obviously, they ran the table. We talked about it. They ran the table. They got to the big game. They beat Duke very comfortably by 20. They are one of the hottest teams entering this tournament right now. And then on the opposite side, you have Texas, which is one of the coldest teams entering this tournament right now. They've lost some of their last games. They lost their first game in the Big 12 tournament by blowing a huge lead to TCU. So this is going to be definitely seeing who is the better team coming into this, because on paper you definitely say Texas and all the big names. Obviously, Chris Beard moving to Texas after a stint in Texas Tech versus Virginia Tech, who is now pretty much known as like one of the best teams in the country right now, just because of how hot they are. They play basketball very methodically. They can pull up from anywhere. They have a bunch of shooters. So right now, those are pretty much those are my 4 favorite matchups in the first round. And I know there's more, but those are the 4 that really stood out to me when I first saw them on Selection Sunday.
Yeah, I'm definitely completely with you, mostly on the Boise State, Memphis, and then Providence, South Dakota State. You mentioned KenPom, and they have this I don't know what it's called, but it's like the quote unquote luckiest teams, which is like the teams that have like won the most, but like very, very close. And Providence was number 1 on that list. And you mentioned, South Dakota State is one of the most efficient offenses in the country, especially from deep, but inside and outside. And yeah, that's definitely one of the games I highlighted. And then, Boise State, Memphis. Memphis obviously had all the hype going into the season with Penny Hardaway and all the the freshmen and the young players, and they really struggled early in the year. And people were questioning, if Penny Hardaway is really a good coach. And I want to say it's like the second half of the year, Memphis really turned it around. They lost to Houston in the conference championship. I think that they swept them, if I'm not mistaken, in the regular season, or at least won one of those games. Boise State out of the Mountain West, one of the more, I feel like, underrated conferences in the country, in the Mountain West. That should be a good one. And then one I wanted to highlight, other one was UNC Marquette. Marquette really the second half of the year really picked it up out of the Big East, and obviously we know UNC as of late they crushed Duke, so they've been on fire. And then they lost to Virginia Tech, who I like that matchup too, but against Texas. So yeah, definitely a lot of good games, but yeah, those are a few that I liked as well. I guess we go to next. What's I guess maybe your favorite, or maybe two favorite double-digit seeds that you can see going, let's just say, to the Sweet 16?
Yeah, definitely. Number one, definitely Virginia Tech. VTech has a somewhat easy path, quote unquote. They play Texas in the first round, and then they either play Purdue or Yale. And Purdue has been very inconsistent as of lately. We've talked about Purdue so many times on these episodes with Jaden Ivey and Zach Edey. You know, they rely on those two so much. That could be a problem for a Virginia Tech team that is so well rounded. I don't know if Jaden Ivey and Edey could potentially catch up. So I like Virginia Tech out of the East region to potentially make it to the Sweet 16. Another one potentially could be Loyola Chicago. Obviously, we know how good that team is. Loyola Chicago, they had that incredible run 4 years ago. They've been in the tournament pretty much ever since. They have a first-round matchup with a very vulnerable Ohio State team who just lost their first-round matchup. So that's a gimme right there. And then they got a matchup with Villanova, and that is kind of the game where I'm kind of shaking. I don't know if that Loyola Chicago slow, methodical offense can beat beat the Villanova offense that scores so much and depends on Colin Gillespie so much. I don't know if they're going to be able to neutralize him, but even though Loyola Chicago does have a good defense under first-year head coach Drew Valentine. So in terms of those double-digit seeds, I say definitely one Virginia Tech. Another one would probably be Loyola Chicago, depending on how they are in the first round. Obviously, it's not in their favor to potentially lose that first round matchup. And then another one, just maybe, I don't know, just throwing that out there. Davidson, the Davidson Wildcats out of that West region, they play Michigan State in the first round. The Michigan State team that has looked good at times, like recently they've looked good, but then obviously they've had some very bad losses on the season. You don't really know which Michigan State team is good, but obviously Tom Izzo in March is a completely different character. This is a good storyline actually because the Davidson point guard, his name was Foster, I think Foster Lawyer or something. He was the Michigan State transfer, so he's basically playing his old team. And the best part is that Davidson's only 2 hours away from where they're actually playing in Greenville, so that's pretty much a Davidson home game for the Wildcats. So that's a good and then obviously they get a matchup against Duke in the second round. And the way Duke is looking, they look very vulnerable right now. Obviously, this is the magical Coach K final run, trying to get that last championship before he retires. And it may be spoiled round 2 if Davidson gets hot because they're one of the best shooting teams in the country as well. Davidson has a very good offense led by 32nd year coach Bob Milkop. Bob McKillop, excuse me. So I say Davidson, one, definitely Virginia Tech, and then maybe Loyola Chicago for my favorites to get to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think I have any at this moment making to the Sweet 16 double-digit seeds, but obviously we're still a few days away from the first. A few days away, so I could still make some changes. But just kind of looking at some potential teams. I think if Rutgers could beat Notre Dame, which we'll get into the first four in a little bit here, but Alabama's kind of a team that's really kind of played up and down to the competition all season long. So, and then Texas Tech, they play in round 2 most likely, and they've been as of late a little bit up and down. So, the Rutgers is one team I could see. My only concern though is that away from home, Rutgers is a different team this year. So, not being in front of their home crowd, obviously, I think that will definitely be their biggest downfall, I feel like. But yeah, I don't have Virginia Tech making the Sweet 16, but I agree with you that they have the momentum. And as we've seen a lot, momentum is a big deal, heading into the big dance, the NCAA tournament. So, and yeah, like you said, Purdue has been shaky at times this year. Yeah, I think those are the two that probably stand out the most, just kind of taking a quick look at the bracket. Let's just do one more question about the bracket. Obviously we're still a few days away, like I said, so you can still make changes, but whether it's first round or just a team making the Final Four, just kind of anything, I guess. What's maybe right now your biggest surprise that maybe not many other people have, whether it's an upset or a team making it far, a team making it to the Final Four, or just anything about your bracket?
Yeah, definitely. One thing that may bring a lot of surprises to people's faces, I think Colorado State's a Sweet 16 team. I think Colorado State could potentially get past Michigan in the first round if they really neutralize Hunter Dickinson inside. And then next round, they probably match up with a good Tennessee team. But if David Roddy gets hot sometimes, I mean, if he gets going, that just means the end for Tennessee. So I think Colorado State could potentially be a Sweet 16 team if they just get hot right now. And right now they're playing very good basketball. Very obviously, they have their very defensive style of play. So if they slow down that like a very very high octane Tennessee team, I can see Colorado State moving to the Sweet 16 for sure. Another big surprise to me is that I don't know if Baylor is going to be a Sweet 16 team this year. If they match up with UNC in the second round, it could smell upset, honestly. I like that matchup for Baylor and UNC right there. Obviously, UNC, you've mentioned it, they really rely on Armando Bacot so much. He's their guy. But Baylor, they've looked great sometimes, and then all of a sudden, they're losing to teams like Oklahoma, just not really consistent. So definitely that. A lot of people are ruling out St. Mary's already just because obviously they're playing either Indiana or Wyoming, but St. Mary's has the potential to be a Sweet 16 team as well out of the West Coast Conference. I mean, led by Tommy Kuzi, that team is just, they beat Gonzaga. Like, people are forgetting that this St. Mary's team is one of few teams to beat Gonzaga this year. And yes, they lost the other two times.
They kept it close in the conference championship until the very end too.
Exactly, and like they kept it close the whole time. Like people are forgetting, like that loss back in early in conference play when Gonzaga absolutely beat down St. Mary's in the Kennel in Spokane. And now they've just grown as a team. So people are ruling out St. Mary's, but this team, they have a favorable matchup first round depending on who they get between Wyoming and Indiana. I think St. Mary's could give UCLA a whole lot of trouble, and I think St. Mary's could potentially be a Sweet 16, maybe Elite 8, depending on what happens in the upper half of the bracket. So those are pretty much my big surprises. Davidson obviously could be a Sweet 16, as I said earlier. But yeah, those are pretty much some of my hot takes, because a lot of people aren't really saying that, but yeah, those are pretty much some of my big notes to take heading into the first day of play.
So I have two that I'll talk about real quick. One kind of counters one of yours, so I'll start with that. And out of the East, I have UCLA. Right now, I have UCLA going to the Final Four out of the East. I think, the experience that they have bringing back basically the same Final Four team. Juzang's looking better as of late. And what's their? I'm blanking right now. What's their big three?
Juzang, Jaquez.
Yeah, Juzang, Jaquez, and Bernard, right? Yeah, Bernard.
They have Campbell. They have Riley. All those guys.
I think it was Bernard I was thinking about. That's been catching fire. Juzang looks healthy. I mean, if you saw the first half of the Pac-12 championship against Arizona, they looked really good. And then they fell apart in the second half. But I think they're experienced, and I think that Baylor is probably the most fraud number one seed, I think, in my opinion. So I have UCLA beating Akron, St. Mary's, and I've been beating Baylor, but I do like your take of potentially UNC beating Baylor in that matchup. That's what I'm considering. And then I have the UCLA beating, I think it's Purdue in the Elite Eight to make it out of that region. So I don't know if that's like a super, super hot take, but I know it's probably more unpopular, compared to what most people have. And then the other one I'll touch on is a team that we've been talking about all season as a team that could be upset. Right now, in the second round out of the Midwest, I have USC taking out Auburn in the second round.
I knew you were going to say that too.
I think that, you look at Auburn and where their biggest strength is obviously their defense. And then you have the size with Kessler and Jabari Smith. And I think that USC has that size led by Mobley and the physicality to kind of match that size that they have down low. And I think USC with Boogie Ellis and Peterson arguably has the better guard play. And but both offenses are inconsistent and both defenses are tough and physical. So I think that they match up really well. And yeah, I ultimately am taking this upset. I'm like 90%, towards this upset. Like I said, I like the way USC matches up with their physicality, led by Mobley, brother of Evan Mobley of the Cavaliers. And yeah, I think we've been talking, or at least we've been talking all the last few weeks about how Auburn could be, not first round exit, but second round or Sweet 16 exit. And yeah, I like USC here.
Yeah, I mean, I that's something I really took into account too. I mean, we've been talking about it for so long, but as soon as I saw that matchup, I was like, okay, a USC Auburn potential second round matchup, that would be interesting. You mentioned those guards out of USC, Boogie Ellis, Drew Peterson. They have that size to compare with Auburn and with Jabari Smith and Kressler. So I definitely agree with you there. I definitely agree that USC could be smelling some upset against Auburn in the second round. And then in terms of UCLA, I mean, we saw it last year. No one really gave UCLA any credit, but I think this year they definitely do have that Final Four potential because they have that same roster as last year. And we saw how they played in March under head coach Mick Cronin. We saw how Juzang and Hawkes and all those guys played at the end of this. I mean, obviously, you mentioned it in the Pac-12 championship game. They were keeping it close. They were playing a very competitive game against a dominant Arizona team in the Pac-12 championship game on Saturday. So I definitely agree that both UCLA can make it to that Final Four potential, and USC could be smelling upset against number 2 Auburn in the second round. Definitely agree with you there.
Yeah, but the USC Miami in the first round, I think, should be a good game. And I will say that I think if I have USC obviously beating Miami, but I think if Miami, it's like a 1 point spread, so it's obviously a pretty even spread. I think if Miami does take out USC, I don't think Miami matches up well with Auburn. So obviously, especially in all these like tournament challenge groups, you run the risk of, if you have a team upsetting 2 in a row, making the Sweet 16, and they lose round 1, and that hurts your bracket or your chances big time. But I mean, we see these upsets, every year that, some people predict, but maybe not everyone. So you just kind of have to take your shots where you think something's really possible. And I think going with your gut instinct is really important when filling out your bracket, because I feel like, when it's released on Sunday and you have 4 days, 4 days until the first day of round 1, a lot of people switch up their bracket and their picks like 50, 100 times, and that can typically backfire sometimes when you're overthinking it so much. So I think that that's important, is to kind of go, not to like fill it out once and just let it be necessarily, but just to more times and not go with your instinct, I guess. So I guess from there we can go into the first 4 games. So again, today's Monday. So we have Tuesday. We have Texas A&M. Was it Corpus Christi, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then against Texas Southern. I'm not gonna lie, I really don't know much about either of these teams. Texas Southern is a 3.5-point favorite. Korea, do you have any word on this game?
Yeah, great job first of all by Texas A&M Corpus Christi, the Islanders, making it for the first time in a very long time. I think the first time since like '95 that they made it to the tournament. So congratulations to them. But Texas Southern, very very high scoring team. I also think that they're a favorite for that reason. Texas Southern will probably get out of this and will play Kansas in the first round on Thursday. But it's just a battle of the 16s. It's what the first 4 is all about. The first matchup of March Madness, the first 4, and I believe that I highly believe that the Texas Southern Tigers, Texas Southern, they will get out of this first 4 matchup and face off against Kansas.
Okay, cool. So now we'll go into Indiana, Wyoming, which is the night game on Tuesday. Indiana's coming off the win over Michigan and then the 3-point loss against Iowa in the Big Ten tournament. And then Wyoming is coming off the 3-point win over UNLV and then the loss against Boise State in the semis of the Mountain West conference tournament. Currently, Indiana's a 4-point favorite. Who are you leading there with Korea?
Right now, I would say I'm leaning toward Indiana, but Wyoming, obviously, they are no easy task. They have two guys. I already mentioned them, Hunter Maldonado and Drake Jeffries. That's their 1-2 combo down in Cheyenne, Wyoming. They've been having a fantastic run throughout this season. They were pretty much known as maybe a 6 seed or a 7 seed heading into late February, but then they lost some key matchups. I think they lost against UNLV once. And then they also lost against New Mexico. So those are some bad losses for the Wyoming Cowboys. But I still believe Indiana is the better team in this situation right now. Indiana, obviously, they had a very, very close game with a hot Iowa team. Had to take a game-winning 3 to beat them. But other than that, they came back down. We mentioned it, down almost 100 points by that point against Michigan. Came back and got the victory. This team is pretty much, I would say, the better team. They have some dark horses on that team. Indiana's the favorite. I say Indiana, but it's not going to be a blowout. I think it's going to come down to one of the last final shots or some free throws. But tomorrow night, I see Indiana basically scraping by Wyoming and having a first-round matchup with the 5 seed St. Mary's.
Yeah, and Wyoming also has Graham Ike, the forward, who's one of the better players as well. I'm kind of leaning towards Indiana as well, straight up, but Wyoming would be a fun team to watch in the tournament with Maldonado and Ike and Jeffries and all of them. But yeah, Indiana gave Iowa a run, the eventual champion of that conference tournament. So both teams should be a fun game. And now we'll get into the first game on Wednesday between Wright State and Bryant. Wright State with a narrow 1-point win. That was the huge comeback, I believe, over Northern Kentucky. In the Horizon League Championship. And then you have Bryant, led by Peter Kiss, the nation's leading scorer, who absolutely crushed Wagner in the Northeast Conference Final Championship. Wright State is currently a 3.5-point favorite. Who do you got, Korea?
I'm sorry, Wright State's the favorite?
Yeah.
Do they not know a guy named Peter Kiss? Obviously, they don't know who Peter Kiss is because Peter Kiss is that guy. Peter Kiss is the leading scorer in all of basketball. He averages about 20-something points a game. He is one of the biggest threats in basketball right now. Bryant is easily winning this game. I don't know why Wright State's a favorite. If they neutralize Peter Kiss, then maybe. But for right now, I definitely am 100% going with Bryant in this, and they'll be playing your Arizona Wildcats in the first round.
Yeah, I think it would be an interesting game. You can look at it one way where like you said, if Wright State neutralizes Peter Kiss, then they have a better chance. But you could also say that's easier said than done. Did you see the news of who passed away? Is that?
Yeah, I was just about to say, for any WWE fans out there, Scott Hall, known as Razor Ramon, just passed away at the age of 63. Obviously, he I think was dealing with some complications. He was on life support. But today just got word that he just passed away. So any WWE fans out there, we just lost a legend. So rest in peace to the great legend, Scott Hall.
Yeah, no doubt. Prayers out to his family and friends and everyone who knew him. So now we'll get into the final first 4 game and the one I'm most looking forward to between Notre Dame and Rutgers. I don't even see a spread, so I assume it's just a straight up pick 'em. Rutgers had the double bye and lost to Iowa. Lost to Iowa, and then Notre Dame lost to Virginia Tech, the eventual champion in the ACC tournament. I mentioned Rutgers as a potential Sweet 16 team if I had to choose a double-digit team, so I do like them here. What do you think, Korea?
Yeah, well, first of all, I just looked into this game, and it's so close. Notre Dame's a 1-point favorite right now, so that spread is pretty much close. Right now, it's so close. Obviously, you mentioned Rutgers losing that first game after clinching the double bye against Iowa. Just looked like that whole Rutgers squad with Omariori and Ron Harper, just couldn't get it done against a hot Iowa team at the time. Let alone who would have not thought they would have been the champions of the Big Ten this year. But one name I want to mention, we know him pretty well. His name is Ron Harper Jr. He is the X factor in this game. And if Notre Dame can neutralize him, then Notre Dame is going to cut out with the victory. But Ron Harper Jr. can just crush dreams at any time. We saw it in that big Rutgers Indiana game, hitting that game-winning three to pretty much secure Rutgers in, and that's why they're one of the last teams in. But for me, I definitely like Rutgers in this matchup just because of that X factor, Ron Harper Jr. Notre Dame, obviously, they had a pretty bad loss against, at the time, was Virginia Tech, the 7th seed out of the ACC tournament. But who would have thought that Virginia Tech would have gone on that run? But for me personally, I do like Rutgers, and you mentioned that this is one of the most intriguing. This is probably the most intriguing matchup of the first four, So I'm going to go with Rutgers. It's going to be very close, but I think Ron Harper Jr. seals it at the end, and Rutgers will be playing Alabama in the first round.
I like it. So that will do it for today's talk of March Madness. I think we'll get maybe a little bit more into it on Wednesday. We'll recap the Tuesday first four games, and then maybe give our final four predictions or something like that. But yeah, we'll go over that on Wednesday. So now we'll get into our second of three topics today, and I know for free agency, a lot of stuff going on today. I think I would say probably the biggest splash was the Chargers bringing in J.C. Jackson, obviously with Russell Wilson now in that division, and Patrick Mahomes. Probably it's definitely the best division overall in football now. And now you have, and then we talked about last episode them trading for Khalil Mack. I believe we talked about that. So now they have Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, J.C. Jackson, Derwin James, Asante Samuel, Linval Joseph, Kenneth Murray, among others. So that's definitely a scary group. What's your overall thoughts on the signing? And I guess maybe what's your overall take on the Chargers this upcoming season?
Yeah, first off, the Chargers are making moves defensively. Obviously, we first saw it on Friday with the trade for Khalil Mack. That was a big acquisition for them. Obviously, only giving up a few picks for Khalil Mack. That's a good trade. That really bolsters that interior defensive line for the Chargers, who already have one of the best defensive ends in the nation, Joey Bosa. You pair him up with Khalil Mack, and then they already have now J.C. Jackson in that secondary, along with, if we forget about him, Derwin James. He's still that guy at FSU. So, the Chargers are low-key sneakily making like a top 5 defense in the National Football League right now. But obviously, J.C. Jackson was one of the biggest ones. He wanted to get his money paid. He was linked with the Chargers so many times. He got his money. So congratulations to him. But you mentioned how the AFC West is now the best division in football. And obviously, one of the biggest names coming into that division, Russell Wilson, kind of makes that more prominent. We already have 2 other quarterbacks in Justin Herbert. And, of course, one of the legends of the game right now, Patrick Mahomes, who make the game a lot more interesting. But now the AFC West is going to be so much more competitive, which is all the star talent coming to these teams. It's going to be interesting. I like how the Chargers are really just, focusing on that defensive secondary, making it as strong as they can. And on offensive side, obviously they still have Austin Eckler. They brought back Mike Williams. We talked about it with that 3-year, $60 million deal. That was big for them. They still have big threat in Keenan Allen. So, yeah, the Chargers are just pretty much making themselves more well-rounded. I like what the Chargers are doing. They're sneaking into that maybe being second or third in the division. It's going to be them. It's going to be the Chargers, Broncos, and the Chiefs all fighting it out probably for that top spot in the division, or maybe finishing second or third. So I like what the Chargers are doing. They're really trying to be competitive with these other 2 teams.
Yeah, for sure. They're definitely. I think the biggest hurdle for the Chargers is just staying healthy, staying on the field. If they can stay healthy, they're definitely. I think Herbert is a dark horse MVP candidate. I think, and they could definitely be a really good team. It's just all about staying healthy for the whole defense, pretty much. Mike Williams, and then so now we'll go into the other team making big moves today, the Jaguars. Giving Christian Kirk, making him the 3rd highest paid receiver in the league as of right now, 4-year, $84 million. You can only imagine what Debo and Devontae Adams, who reportedly doesn't want to be on the tag, are going to get. They signed Brandon Sheriff, the offensive lineman from Washington, to shore up that position. They gave, I think, a 1-year deal to Evan Ingram at the tight end position. What do you think? Yeah.
Well, first, they gave Evan Ingram a position for the slot wide receiver. They're going to put him at slot wide receiver. That's already something wacky. Two, they made Christian Kirk the third highest receiver in the league, $21 million a year. I mean, they must be seeing something we're not, because Christian Kirk has been pretty much shadowed by DeAndre Hopkins and AJ Green in Arizona, but what numbers has he really put up to say, okay, you are the third highest paid wide receiver in the league? You were getting your money in Jacksonville. This is probably one of the most questionable signings I've seen pretty much all throughout free agency. But hey, it happened, right? I mean, don't even get me started with Tom Brady coming back in the league. Yeah, that guy came back. Who would have thought? 2 months, 6 weeks. That man retired for 6 weeks. It was I went to sleep. I woke up. He's back in the league again. So, just a whole bunch of moves right there. I don't understand why they're making Christian Kirk the getting $21 million, but I guess they really want him to just be that number one receiver in Jacksonville, I guess. So that'll be interesting to see. I don't know why they're putting Evan Ingram at the slot receiver position, considering he is more of a tight end, but I mean, don't forget they also have other pieces in there. But
they still have Chenault too, and then
who's
Kirk,
a better?
and then so
yeah, exactly. Chenault is a better slot receiver than Ingram, who obviously Chenault has that size and that speed to actually be a slot receiver. So I think a lot of questions are going on with what's going on in Jacksonville, but they must be seeing something we're not. Obviously, they brought in Brandon Sheriff. They needed that protection because Trevor Lawrence was always running for his life if he wasn't intercepted in the pocket in Jacksonville. So, I mean, Jacksonville's making some moves, but are they really the right moves? I don't know, but we'll see. But right now, I don't really know how to really evaluate Jacksonville, considering they're making Evan Ingram a slot receiver and then paying Christian Kirk $21 million a year to catch balls. Pause. But so I don't know. But I guess Balke and that whole Jacksonville organization just see something that we don't.
Yeah, I mean, I know there are reports of teams trying to sign him as a slot receiver. I doubt he actually lines up there with Kirk and Chenault both being options in the slot, but I guess time will tell. And then some other moves to talk about: the Cardinals backfield, them re-signing James Conner to, I believe, it was a 3-year deal, and then Chase Edmonds heading to Miami, which I kind of like that fit with Mike McDaniel coming from the 49ers to Miami. They have, they still have Myles Gaskin, Ahmed. I think the other guys are free agents like Lindsey and Duke Johnson. I don't think they're still on the team, but they might be. But yeah, I think with the outside run scheme that Mike McDaniel is probably going to bring from the 49ers to Miami, I think Edmonds really fits that role. I think it would be kind of like a 1A, 1B between him and Gaskin for the most part is what I would think. But I mean, I've also heard Miami could be in the running for a running back in the draft, which I would assume that this puts them out of that. But I mean, I guess you never know if a running back falls far enough. And then Connor, he was a touchdown machine last year in Arizona, and he's an RB1 in fantasy football. I'm sure you're happy as a keeper in our league for him to have the backfield to himself. So yeah, what's your takeaway from both of those two signings?
First of all, I was very pleased when I saw that the Dolphins were trying to get Chase Edmonds. That meant James Conner was going to be that number one back again. Obviously, James Conner was the lead back in Pittsburgh before they released him, and then he got picked up by the Arizona Cardinals. Obviously, great story out of James Conner. Obviously, if you don't know the story, with him fighting cancer, amazing story. But James Conner, obviously, he was the touchdown-dependent machine in the red zone last year for the Cardinals. If it was anywhere between the 5-yard line and in, it was always going to James Conner. Almost pretty much the 10-yard line, and it was going to James Conner. And they brought him back off that amazing season. He finished top 5 in standard running back leagues. So great ascension for him. He deserves it. In terms of Chase Edmonds, obviously it was pretty much Chase Edmonds' role at the beginning of the year until he was injured, and then James Conner just started coming in, and they just started scoring more because James Conner was that guy, and then also DeAndre Hopkins got injured, so he was down, so it just depended on AJ Green and James Conner to pretty much carry them through. So Chase Edmonds, you mentioned that pretty crowded running back room in Miami right now with Ahmed out of pretty much the UW boys in Gaskin and Ahmed, both out of UW. it's kind of interesting. I don't think Duke Johnson as well as Philip Lindsay, because I mean that would be a very, very crowded running back room with OD5, and if they are pursuing potentially a running back in the draft, I don't know if they're going to be doing that still. But I like this for Chase Edmonds. Obviously, he's going to be. I think it would be more of that scheme that you talked about with Mike McDaniels, that outside run scheme. And then obviously the Niners, they had so many running backs that they could use, and now Mike McDaniels bringing that into Miami, that three-headed monster with Ahmed, Gaskin, and now Chase Edmonds. It kind of just proves that maybe they're going to be using a lot more of their run game now. Now that they have a head coach who is from a West Coast offensive style, and also speaking of the Dolphins, they brought in Teddy Bridgewater. That was a big signing for me. I kind of like this, kind of be that backup in case Tua is either, being Tua or he goes down. That's a solid backup for him. Obviously, Teddy Bridgewater, he's not really that starter anymore, but he comes in. He came in for the Broncos, got a couple wins, kind of plays that style. So I like this for the Dolphins, but I like this more for James Conner and his draft and his fantasy stock right now. Way, way up right now. After a very touchdown dependent season for him, 1 and 2 just kind of being the lead guy in Arizona.
Yeah, I mean Connor does definitely. It seems like every week you're like, he can't find the end zone every week, like he can, but then he's kept on doing it every week. And I mean he was really good as a receiver when he was given the opportunity. So now with Edmonds out of the picture, you'd think that he should see that true 3-down role that he can really thrive in this Arizona offense. This isn't free agency, but we can talk about Deshaun Watson real quick. It sounds like he's down to Carolina and New Orleans, so 2 NFC South teams. Obviously, the Saints went through the carousel of Winston, and he got hurt. Taysom Hill, Trevor Siemian last year, and then Carolina too went through the carousel too. So both of them had like 3 or 4 quarterbacks start throughout last season. So obviously, both are big news. Both need those big upgrades. I feel like the Saints are definitely a better team with him than Carolina, I feel like, but they're also in like a really bad cap situation. So that'll be interesting to see how that figures out. But I mean, last year it was reported that Watson would reject to go to Carolina with his no trade clause. So I guess obviously he's changed his mind since last year. Well, I guess what's your prediction on where he goes?
Well, first off, he ain't coming here. Thank God he ain't coming here. He already rejected Seattle. That was a great move by him. But in terms of the 2 NFC South teams, it's gonna be interesting. I think him in New Orleans would be a better fit because he does have that kind of number 1 receiver again, like he had in Houston. We had DeAndre Hopkins. He has Michael Thomas. And
don't sleep on DJ Moore. Yeah,
I'm not sleeping on DJ Moore, of course, not at all. But I'm just saying, in terms of situation, I think the Saints would be interesting to see. Obviously, Carolina, we mentioned that quarterback carousel that they went through with 3 quarterbacks throughout the season. I think Carolina will probably give a big offer, but I think the Saints will give a bigger offer because I think they're really desperate for that quarterback position. And I think Carolina may go to the draft as well as their contingency plan. But in terms of Deshaun, obviously, with him being acquitted of all of his legal charges and everything, I think the Saints are going to make a big pursuit of Deshaun Watson. I think Deshaun may end up in New Orleans just based on, the fact that New Orleans really wants him. Obviously, you mentioned that whole cap space drama with New Orleans. That'll be something to really look out for. If New Orleans really has enough to actually acquire Deshaun Watson, they would have to probably give up a lot, obviously, and a lot more on top of that to make sure that they can take his contract. So that'll be interesting to see what New Orleans has really offered because it seems like they're really trying to get him. So I guess they're really making a whole lot of offers or intriguing offers to try and bring Deshaun Watson to New Orleans.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's always ways to work around the cap, even if it seems like it's impossible. There's always different ways of restructuring contracts or releasing players at the end of the roster or whatever. So there's always ways to work around that. Was there any other moves from today that you saw that you wanted to touch on, or was?
I mean, another one. This is obviously home to us. Seattle bringing back both Will Dissly and Quandre Diggs. I thought Quandre Diggs was a good one. Obviously, he had a Pro Bowl year before his ACL tear. I believe, what was that, in the week 18 game against the Cardinals, I believe. Yeah, where he tore his ACL. Obviously, he's going to come back. He's 30, so he's a little old, but he is kind of now the leader of that secondary paired with Jamal Adams. So that was a good re-signing to bring him back. Glad we brought him back. And obviously, Will Dissly kind of makes that trade a little suspect now because now we have Noah Fant and Will Dissly. That's a good 1-2 combo, but at the same time, I mean, I hope the Seahawks can address more offensive line to protect Drew Lock. So, yeah, those are two big moves that I like today. And also, you mentioned it a little bit, something pretty much to keep note for all the fantasy owners out there. Devontae Adams potentially not playing. That's really big because he wants his money, and it seems like the Packers and Adams are not even close to a deal. So that's going to be something to really keep up as we enter more and more into the offseason, leading up to the draft, and then obviously after the draft and heading into training camps and stuff like that. So, yeah, Adams is pretty much one of the bigger things that I saw this morning. Just what will Aaron Rodgers do? I mean, obviously he lost his number one guy. That was kind of like one of the reasons why Aaron Rodgers wanted to come back. So it looks like one is playing, but the other one, I don't know.
Yeah, it'll be something to monitor with the Seahawks signings. I mean, I think Dissly and Fant can work fine together because Disley's kind of more of a blocker, whereas Fant's more of a receiver. But that kind of makes it even more questionable that you pay a blocking tight end $8 million per year. I didn't really get that in terms of like that size. And then with Quandre Diggs, I mean, I think the Seahawks are the only team that's going to give him that kind of money coming off an injury at his age. So it was good to see him get his payday. But yeah, I mean, I think I guess at some point the Seahawks have to spend money somewhere. So I think that kind of had to do with those two signings because, you know, with Watson now rejecting the Seattle, they're going to go into a rebuild. And yeah, we'll see if it's Drew Lock or if they do address quarterback number 9 overall in April next month. Maybe that quarterback starts week 1, or if they wait till 2023 and stick with Drew Lock with 1 year. I've kind of heard Marcus Mariota's name as a potential like bridge quarterback until they address it maybe in 2023. So that could be something to watch out for. But yeah, I think that will do it. It's again, it doesn't actually start till Wednesday for agency, so none of these moves are like technically like official. This is just like the TAMP period, but I mean, 99% of these trades signings are gonna go through on Wednesday. So now with our final topic, just real quick, we'll go through with spring training starting on Thursday, the latest moves in MLB. And of course, as Mariners fans, we have to start with this. We have to start with this. With the Reds trading all-star outfielder Jesse Winker and third baseman Eugenio Suarez to Seattle for Justin Dunn, Jake Fraley, and Brandon Williamson. It seems like pretty much everyone on Twitter likes to steal from the Mariners. Obviously, Winker coming up. I think he was hitting 305, 24 home runs last year. He got hurt late in the year, but to my knowledge, it's not like an injury. It's like long-term concern or anything. And you have Suarez, who is kind of probably the reason why Seattle didn't have to pay too much in this trade because of his contract and his struggles as of late. But, I mean, if you take the last 3 full seasons, so not the 2020 shortened season, but the 3 other than that, he's hit 30-plus home runs in all 3 of those years. One of them, he hit 49 home runs. And if you take, you can't just, like, take away a year, but prior to the last 2 years, he was, like, a consistent, like, 260 to 280 hitter. So, I mean, if he even hits, like, say, like, 250, 240, like, at, like, number 8 in the Mariners lineup, I mean, they'll take that. I want to say that this kind of puts them out of the race for Chris Bryant. I think that's probably likely. But, I mean, you have Kyle Lewis, who's probably not going to be ready for opening day, according to Dakota today. But kind of looking at the general lineup for the Mariners, you'll have Winker in left, Kelenic in center. I think you're going to see Kyle Lewis and Haniger split right field and DH because of both of them having injury history. So you'll have that. And then you'll probably have Suarez and then Toro kind of splitting at third. And then, of course, you have Crawford at short, Adam Frazier, the guy they traded for from the Padres before the lockout, second, Ty France at first. And then it looks like probably they'll stick with Tom Murphy and Cal Raleigh at catcher. And then I could see them doing like a smaller move, like a DH in the short term, but right now probably Luis Torrens at DH. Yeah, I mean, the only notable, and then there was apparently like a player to be named later from the Mariners going to the the Reds. I've heard possibly like Taylor Trammell potentially could be that player. It's not going to be anybody that's going to like make or break the trade or anything. I mean, really the only notable player that Seattle traded was Williamson, who I believe was rated as the number 7 prospect in the Mariners farm system. But with Emerson Hancock and George Kirby, the Mariners kind of had that depth, that pitcher to kind of be able to afford to trade, Williamson for a guy that is going to help them win now. Korea, when you first heard the news, what was your thoughts? And I guess, just what's your overall takeaway from the trade?
First of all, I love it. I love how aggressive Dakota is right now. Obviously, you mentioned it. We may be out of the Chris Bryant sweepstakes right now after this trade happened, but now we finally found our third baseman, and we got an all-star outfielder in the process, and we only traded Justin Dunn, who's been inconsistent as their pitcher. Obviously, I was excited to see Williamson on the mound for us, but I guess he's going to be in Cincy now, and then obviously Jake Fraley, who I'm going to miss. He was obviously one of the leaders of that believed charge late last year. But in return, we're getting a great left-handed hitter in Jesse Winker. We obviously mentioned that he hits bombs, and then obviously Suarez right there. You meant he doesn't have the greatest average, but obviously you mentioned he hits like sometimes he hit almost 50 home runs. So we finally addressed that power that we really needed on our lineup, because that was one of the biggest questions coming into the offseason. What are the Mariners going to do in terms of finding some power in their lineup? And we finally got it with Jesse Winker and Eugenio Suarez. You mentioned the lineup. I heard that Suarez is probably going to be the everyday third baseman for us, so that probably means we may have a platoon at second with Toro and Frazier. We also have short, obviously, J.P. Crawford. First base is obviously going to be Ty France. It's going to be interesting to see when what we do when we call up Julio Rodriguez. That's pretty much one of our X factors back in AAA. I like to see him get called up relatively soon. I've heard things about he may even make the opening day roster, just depending on how he hits in spring training, starting relatively soon in 4 days. So yeah, that outfield is going to be a little crowded, but it's not a bad problem for us. I mean, we have guys like obviously Winker is probably going to be more of the DH because considering he's not really a fast moving outfielder. Then we also have Haniger. And
Lewis, I think Lewis and Haniger will split DH just because of their injury history. That's what I'm thinking is going to happen.
Yeah, that is true. I saw something on Twitter about Dakota already talking about it. I think he was talking about potentially having like a trio with Suarez, I think Lewis and Haniger as well. So that pretty much adds to your reasoning back there. But I'm not complaining one bit. I love this trade. And I am very pleased that the Mariners are now making moves, because this is one of the biggest things heading into this week was when are the Mariners going to start making moves, because everyone was kind of hammering at the organization like, when are we going to start making moves, when are we going to start doing stuff, and we finally are. We got two great players, one obviously pretty much all-star talent, Eugenio Suarez now a third, and then Winker in the outfield. But now we're just down to one more position that we need, and according to Corey Brock of Twitter, he said the Mariners are now trying to add a starting pitcher to round out the rotation. That was pretty much our last thing that we needed, just that number 5 pitcher. But it looks like we're probably not going to get Chris Bryant, which is a shame. But at the same time, we get Suarez and Winker in a trade where we don't even have to trade up any of our top picks, or not picks, but prospects. I mean, I can't be happier. Jerry DiPoto did a great job with this trade. Obviously, the Mariners have been linked to so many names, but we finally got our third baseman. We have a solid power hitting outfielder, and now all we need right now is a starting pitcher for our rotation. So I cannot complain one bit as a Mariner fan. Obviously, Suarez's contract is a little fat, but that's perfectly fine considering what we're bringing in with Winker. So am I complaining? Of course not. This is a great move by Jerry DiPoto. Great move by the Mariners organization as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned the number 5 starter as like a need for Seattle, but then when you also consider the fact that they should be getting George Kirby and Emerson Hancock, 2 of the top guys in the farm system, if they could, I think they're on track to potentially be up in the big leagues this season. So I think just like a small, like 1 year, like veteran as number 5 is all they really need at this point. And then just until, they get Kirby or Hancock up, one of those two. And then we can touch on the other blockbuster trade from today, with the Braves making a move for Athletics first baseman Matt Olson, and that kind of for a huge package of prospects. And so that kind of tells you that they think that Freddie Freeman's going to be heading elsewhere. The A's, I forget who they made. They made another trade a couple days ago or a day or two ago. So that they're definitely in rebuild mode. That's what it seems like. I guess what's your thoughts on this trade, and where do you think Freddie Freeman might go?
Yeah, first off, obviously Oakland is definitely in rebuild mode. They got a haul of prospects from the Braves, though. They got, I think, the Braves number 1 and number 2 overall picks, along I think their 4th, and then another one for Matt Olson, who has an all-star first baseman. But that just means that there already is signs that Freeman is leaving the World Series first baseman. Freddie Freeman. It looks like he's been linked with the Dodgers so much this offseason right now. He may be going out to LA. There's also been talks of him potentially going to New York, but I've also heard New York is in the interest of keeping Rizzo at first. You can't complain with Anthony Rizzo as your first baseman, so it looks like Freddie Freeman may be going out to LA. I've also heard him linked with like the Rays and the Blue Jays, so but it obviously looks like Freddie Freeman is not coming back to Atlanta, considering Atlanta wasn't even trying to bring him back at this point, because it seems like more teams are interested in than his own team. So Freddie Freeman is definitely leaving Atlanta. But in terms of what Atlanta got in, obviously they got a great first baseman, Matt Olson. Oakland is definitely in a massive rebuild mode. There's also been talks of Oakland trying to trade away their third baseman, Gold Glover Matt Chapman. He's been linked to, I think, the Phillies as well in a trade, because obviously Philly has been searching for their third baseman. Oakland right now, full rebuild mode. They've been close so many times throughout like the past, I think, 4 to 5 years, being that maybe first team out of the American League, or, making it and not making it past the second round, or not even making it to the ALCS in either appearance. So they just said, F it, we're just going to start from the bottom again. So they got some solid prospects, great build for Oakland, but great also build for Atlanta to build off of their World Series championship team from last year.
Yeah, it seemed kind of like a win-win based on the direction that both teams are kind of headed. So then we'll get into a third trade that happened yesterday that sent Josh Johnson from Minnesota to the Yankees in exchange for Adrio and Gary Sanchez. And it sounds like Sanchez is going to be on the move again, I believe I heard. But yeah, the Yankees get the power hitter Donaldson at third base. Seems like they're constantly making moves. You mentioned that they're kind of in on Freddie Freeman too, even though they're kind of wanting to keep Rizzo at first. And then I don't know, the Twins are kind of a weird team because they're kind of like, seems like they're kind of like in the middle of like not like rebuilding, like they're still looking to win. But I guess I think it was the defense of Urshela. I guess they liked. And then they also made a trade with the Rangers too, where they traded Mitch Garver, the catcher, and they got Connor Falefa, who then went to the Yankees, I believe, too, in that trade as well. So making all types of moves. So there was that. There's some big news today. Fernando Tatis is going to be out 3 months. I think a fractured wrist. Like last year too, he was out for a lot of time for a good amount of the season too. So there's that. So thoughts out to him, and hopefully he can come back by 3 months would be around June, I guess. So
yeah, right before the All-Star break.
Yeah, and then almost a super scary incident with Mets first baseman Pete Alonso, who was driving to, I think they're in like Port St. Lucie, I think in Florida in first spring training, and some car ran a red light and he hit Alonso, and Alonso's car gets flipped 3 times. Fortunately, Alonso was able to walk away according to reports, but definitely escaped a scary scene there. Andrew Mccutchen just signed with the Brewers within the last hour. So that's one of the recent signing. And then, like I talked about before, I think last episode, that with spring training right around the corner, these players want to sign quickly so they can get acclimated to their new teams, before the season starts in 3-4 weeks. They're still Seiya Suzuki, the international. I think it's either Japan or Korea. He's from the outfielder, so he's still in the market.
And I believe the Mariners are, I think, leading the sweepstakes for Suzuki, if I'm not correct.
I feel like trading for Winker kind of puts them out of it. I feel like they already have a crowded outfield, but I mean, you never know. So we'll keep tabs on that. I know he's meeting with the Cubs, I heard tonight. So that could be a potential landing spot. And yeah, I think that's mostly it. Was there anything else you wanted to go over?
Not really. I mean, just keep us on Wednesday. We'll be giving some updates about the first four. Obviously, some games start tomorrow night, and then we have some more on Wednesday night. So we'll give some previews of those. Also, we'll probably give our last minute, updates about the brackets. That's officially the first day of free agency starts on Wednesday, so we'll give you some more moves for the NFL free agency period, and we'll obviously give you all the latest about MLB moves as we head into the start of spring training.
Yes, sir. So thank you all for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We really appreciate it, and we will catch you all on Wednesday.